system to an e-commerce platform or a customer service portal, or maybe a distributor portal is really possible now in a fraction of the amount of effort as your traditional web development. So that's certainly a big positive there and something to think about. So a data connector is a pre-built sort of template, if you will, kind of like a connection template. From a technical standpoint, we call this an API wrapper. A data connector will allow Power Automate, for example, to communicate with other systems and sources, like maybe it's an accounting system to CRM, or, GP to Power BI, or to another third-party system or service. Currently, I think there's just over 1,000 or so data connectors available for Power Platform. That is growing like literally every day, every week. It consists of what you call standard, and then there are some premium connectors. The standard connectors are free. The premium connectors sometimes will have an additional cost, but it's usually pretty reasonable, nothing crazy. Those will sometimes be developed by third parties, and of course they want to try to recoup their development time. So that's the reason we have sort of this concept of standard and premium connectors. And then, of course, you have the ability to create custom connectors, like I said before. So LBMC can come in and says, if you have a need to connect GP to a specific service or application that there's no existing connector, we can take care of it. We'll create the connector for you. And it's not a really time consuming effort either, as long as the system or service that we're connecting to has a pretty well documented API. We can use that as a basis for creating a connector. And for those of you who have on-premise applications with databases, again, GP, and you want to connect that to Power Platform, you have the ability to deploy, I should say, the Power Platform Data Gateway. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here, just a little bit, and you can kind of see what I mean there. But that allows us to interact with on-premise local applications and databases as well. And with that, Elisa, do we have our second poll question?
We sure do. Let me pop those up. So the second poll question is, what is motivating you to learn more about solution to extend the capabilities of Dynamics GP? Looks like we had a few answers come in, and the lead now is the need for non-accounting staff, non-GP users, to more easily interact. The need to operate more efficiently came in as a close second.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, so how do we connect GP to Dataverse? For Dynamics GP users, the Power Platform Data Gateway that I was mentioning earlier is what we use to sort of keep the data between GP and Dataverse in sync. As we were discussing, once we have the GP data in Dataverse, it allows it to be utilized by all those other services and tools that are part of Power Platform, like Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, maybe a website or a web portal like Power Pages. The Data Gateway is crucial to being able to take that data from the on-premise or local database and getting that data synced to Dataverse. Everything's secured there. There's a high level of security involved, and it's encrypted and all that. So there's no issues, no concerns there. But once you have that information in Dataverse, again, it can be considered by all these additional Power Platform tools and services, for example, Power Apps. So we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through our examples. Let's talk about how Platform can really help you get the most out of Dynamics GP. So we're going to switch from our discussion about Power Platform to more specifically how we're going to combine, take Power Platform and make Dynamics GP better. Okay. So LBMCs, we've helped many clients use Power Platform to extend the capabilities of their accounting systems. I would say the most commonly involved connecting accounting systems like GP to maybe CRM, right? That's a very common use case, or maybe a customer portal, or it could just be to improve reporting. We want the connectivity to leverage business intelligence tools like Power BI, right? We've also built custom integrations and connections to work order and manufacturing systems. And of course, a number of project management platforms are all very common. And of course, custom applications is certainly one that we've probably done the most, as creating a custom application that was supporting an operation or a process outside of the accounting system, for example. And then the users would interact with the process and the data involved with the process. Then we would sync the resulting action, the updated data and approval of some step in their process we would then update the accounting system from the custom application. So those are all just quick examples of some of those scenarios where we're connecting GP with other systems. So let's talk about it more in some specific examples. So in this case, let's talk about GP and CRM. We have a lot of experience linking Dynamics GP and CRM and creating connections and integration. These are just a few of the examples of why you would want to link GP with CRM, but the sky's the limit. It could be any number of reasons why you'd want to do this. But you can see keeping CRM and accounting data in sync, things like customers, contacts, address, sort of like your basic customer data. For data consistency, it's important to keep your accounting data, your CRM data accurate between the two. And then of course we can control things like updates in CRM, don't sync back to GP. Maybe it's just one way. We just want to make sure like billing information and billing contacts or updated phone numbers and addresses are pushed from GP to CRM. Also, quoting as another very common request. So I know in GP, there's different tools like sales pads and these other things for creating quotes or orders outside of GP, essentially in that interface. One common scenario is supporting the ability to link your product availability and updated pricing information. We have a lot of clients that use CRM to do their quoting. So in that situation, we can push that item detail in the product catalog. You can maintain that and sync that with your GP system along with the pricing, which could change quite often. If you don't want your sales team or customer service teams selling product with outdated pricing, this allows us to maintain that for you. And then of course, the processing of a closed won deal. You've got a sales team that they close an opportunity for new business, and we need to get that into our accounting system. A lot of times that's done over an email, or somebody just forwards a copy of the order or the quote, and they have to go in and re-enter it into GP. We absolutely have the ability of taking a CRM opportunity, as we call it, which may be a quote, for example, and being able to just push that over to GP as a new sales order ready to be processed, right? So that's a very common use case. And then of course, things like sales revenue, order purchase history, or order statuses, allowing our customer service and sales teams the ability to see that history and of course, status of open orders. And then of course, sales teams might like to see their sales revenue. You have the invoice revenue. So then keep track of maybe there's some kind of a quota or some kind of sales analysis that they need to do. Another one is AR collections. Of course, we're obviously tracking all our aging and all the details around that in our GP system. But it'd be great, for example, if we could make sure that our sales team or our customer service team is not offering any additional sales. We just simply put the account on hold, right? So in GP, we would say, hey, the client's on credit hold or reaches a certain status, and we could then update CRM to put a big red flag right there on their account and actually prevent them from even creating another opportunity if we wanted to. So that's another great example. And then things like converting sales opportunities to other record types, such as projects or contracts, some of the ERP systems that we work with, and not just ERP, sometimes it's like an outside project management tool. We can interact between CRM and those different tools and applications when we have sales activity on CRM. We want to push that over. I call 2024 the year of the web portals. We're doing a lot of work around web dev, as we call it, and using Power Platform to support it. It's actually been a really exciting year. We've really enjoyed working on these projects. And what I'm really referring to is a couple of different scenarios. What we've seen a lot is web store, sort of e-commerce integration. And in that situation, one of those projects, the client was using Dynamics GP. They have a web store that was previously developed, right? So we didn't actually develop the web store per se, but what we were responsible for is taking the web store, CRM, and Dynamics GP and making them work together. And so the way we did that, and the information that they're exchanging between those three systems are things like order transactions, product data, item availability, and pricing. So like in GP, if, in a web store, there's nothing worse than going on back order by mistake, right? So You want to make sure that there's logic in there that if, you're sold out and you have none on hand and none on order, you want to make sure that in your web store, that item is hidden, it's turned off, or just says out of stock. Maybe do the little email, notify me when it's back in stock type stuff. In some cases, we've had web portals where the customer is allowed to look at things like their specific info or their invoice or order history. Another great example, a GP customer wanted integration with RMA. This customer makes a product that tends to need to be returned for repairs or work. In that situation, they want to be able to better handle the RMA process. So they have their web portal where the customer is able to make the request. That return or service request comes into CRM, where a customer service person will review it. And after the service person has followed up with the customer and reviewed the details, they can then commit it to GP and it'll return that RMA number. So that's another great example of a web portal type experience or customer service experience scenario. Some other applications, whether it be custom apps or services, or if you're using project management apps like Smartsheet or Jira, if there are details that we sync between our in this case, GP to our project software, we can do that. Same thing with contracts, special services billings. We had a project where a client did billing through another application, but they wanted to post some transactions to GP. So we actually built some automation to allow them to do that. More recently, we've had a client that has requested the ability to just simply better automate and capture electronically their inventory transactions. And what I mean by that is during production, they need to go and pull material from bin locations, and they need to be able to make sure that their inventory stays accurate. So as they go and they pull that particular raw material, they're able to deduct that from what's on hand, and that updates GP. And then that same client, the same app that we're looking at for them would also handle their physical accounts. So using a tablet like an iPad or even a phone like an iPhone, you do not necessarily have to have an actual scanning device or any of that these days. For more complex warehouse automation type needs, there's a lot of really good ISV industry solutions for that. In this particular situation, this client didn't really need all of that. They just needed those two functions. So we're able to support that with our platform. And then custom applications, a couple that we built in regards to purchase requests. So we have another client that they operate a number of farms, and those farms, obviously they have to have material to operate. And so the headquarters being in some cases hundreds or thousands of miles away, they couldn't just walk a purchase order or purchase request down to the main office and have them order hay for their farms. So they were using a paper form that the farm operators would fill out, and they would scan and then send it to the office, who would then enter it into the accounting system as a purchase order. And then they would get back to them and say, okay, you can order your hay or whatever it is you need for we're skipping all that. What we did, and this project is almost live actually, but what we're doing is building a purchase request app. And it's just a simple power app that all the farms will be able to access, and they can put in the material that they need. So it will actually take the list of materials available in GP, and it will display those items, say, okay, I need to order 1 of these, 5 of these, 6 of these, or whatever, to create essentially a purchase request. That purchase request gets reviewed and then approved. And if it's approved, then it gets pushed into the accounting system as a purchase order. Very simple. And the client seems to really love that. So it saved them a ton of time dealing with scanning and all the additional data entry into the accounting system. And then work orders as well. So we have a client that's really service work oriented. They get out in the field and they're basically fulfilling work orders. They wanted a way to better manage their work order environment. So we created a power app that did exactly that. It managed their entire work order management process, from the assignment of the engineer or tech that was going out to perform the work. And then essentially we were taking that data and giving them an ability to push that into their accounting system for billing and for costing and whatnot on that particular work order. And lastly, I would imagine most of you are familiar with Power BI at this point, but if not, we do have a session we conducted before where we talked a lot about Power BI. So maybe you get a chance to go back and watch some of those recorded events to to catch up on that. All right. So process automation is our last topic here. And I was mentioning a few of these before. Power Automate gives us such an ability to automate these processes that often go unmanaged or untracked in our operations. It's kind of like we know they exist, or they're basically supported through email or spreadsheet process. Like I said, a lot of times these are just paper documents that people are making notes on or updating and just handing forward, right? This is really where we can provide a lot of value for clients. But let's start about some of the basic stuff. Notifications. Okay. These days, again, it's not enough to just either send an email or walk by somebody's desk and drop something off, right? First of all, we may not remember to send the email. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. Power Automate does a great job supporting that notification center concept, right? So we have all these different unique situations where we have to make sure someone is notified or is included in a process overall, right? So we can do that by email, or as I said earlier, SMS is becoming a lot more common, a lot more popular, making sure that people are instantly notified. Approval workflows, another really common example of when our GP customers would leverage Power Platform. For example, like a credit limit review process. GP obviously allows you to track some of that information in there, but it doesn't really have a true automated workflow that will route the details about a client's financial information or application or maybe the credit report. This credit and limit approval process will be supported by like a Power App and Power Automate to route. Journal entry approval. This was an example we had not long ago whereby a client wanted to make sure that journal entries of a certain amount were reviewed and approved before they were posted. And we can do that again as well with the combination of a Power App and Power Automate. And then there's some more common examples with what I call monitoring ERP activity. Things like low stock, right? So maybe we have certain items that are very popular items. Power Automate and Power Platform can actually monitor activity. So they can look for low stock thresholds and even automate reorder, back order status, back in stock. This can be done in conjunction with, again, back to our web e-commerce example. Maybe we use Power Automate to help support this sort of back order status update. Hey, this item's back in stock. Send an email to, these 3 customers who have orders on back order. Yeah, that's another great example. And again, this is all automated. There's not a person having to click a button or do anything. The system's doing it for you. And another example of some really great process automation using RPA, getting back to that robotic process automation I was mentioning earlier, is manufacturer pricing. Now, if anybody in here is a distributor and knows what I mean by having to constantly go and retrieve updated pricing from a manufacturer, reviewing said pricing or maybe manipulating the spreadsheet with that pricing data, and then either having to import it or manually key those pricing updates into GP, I feel your pain. I know exactly what you mean. I've had many clients over the years that have had this problem. RPA is a great way to alleviate it. You can use RPA to record those steps, essentially. It's a little more complicated than just pressing the record button, but you literally do press record, and it's going to track the steps that you went through to log into the manufacturer's distributor portal, download the latest pricing. It'll review the file, it'll modify the columns, or maybe even apply a % markup, whatever it is, right? I can manipulate that data, is what I'm saying, and then turn around and import that in GP. So I think that's a very popular use case for RPA because I know a lot of clients have dealt with that over the years. With that, I think, Alyssa, we have one final poll question. Is that right?
Yes, we do. So the final question was, how does your accounting team research ways to improve financial system and process efficiency? Looks like the top answer was occasionally. Close second was all the time. And then some folks said not often.
Well, I'm glad nobody said rarely.
So with that, we just want to thank Jason and begin our Q&A live. If anyone has further questions about anything that Jason did share today and we don't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us at info@lbmctech.com. Jason, it looks like we have one question that came in. The question is about licensing requirements for using Power Automate for integration. They would like to know what those licensing requirements are.
Yes, that's a great question. I would say that as powerful as Power Platform is, especially Power Automate, they don't, in my opinion, price it high enough. I think it's a really good bargain. Power Automate is available with most of your Office E3 to E5 level licenses, right? So many of you on this webinar may already have Power Automate. So you might check with your IT team. If not, you can purchase Power Automate Premium Edition. Last check is $15 a user a month, but not all users would necessarily have to have it. It's not like your whole staff would have to get Power Automate Premium license. It would just be those that are interacting with those flows. If you wanted to use the RPA desktop functionality I mentioned, where it can record your actions and then actually them for you, that was like the manufacturer pricing example. So that $15 a month actually includes that ability. If anybody has any more questions about the licensing, we can certainly find out what you already have and help you obtain some Power Automate licenses as well. Just let us know.
The other question that came in is, can Power Automate handle real-time data integration?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I would say, it's near real time, at least in the example of GP. My answer would change a little bit if we were dealing with two cloud applications, but in the example of GP and Power Platform / Dataverse, right? We do have the data gateway that I had talked about before. That data gateway is set up so that it synchronizes data from GP to Dataverse on an interval, but the interval can be quick. It can be like 30 seconds or 15 seconds. It can be pretty fast, right? It all really just depends on how much data that we're syncing from GP up to Dataverse or vice versa. So my answer is, it is very quick. It's near real time, but I wouldn't consider it like true real time.
Okay, thank you very much. I think those are all of the questions we had come in for right now. Again, if you have any questions, please do reach out to us at info@lbmctech.com. We hope this webinar on increasing the versatility of GP with Microsoft Power Platform has been informative and valuable to everyone who joined us today. Again, if you complete the follow-up webinar survey before midnight, you will be entered into a drawing for a $250 Amazon gift card. Please keep an eye out for more webinars this year. And one last time, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. If you have further questions or need guidance on how to get started, our team is always available to support and assist you.